Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Halfblood. I'm B.
And I'm Zack.
So we're looking at Chapter 6 of The Lightning Thief, and our thoughts about it and how we're feeling.
What's the title of this chapter, B?
I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom.
Yes, every time I think of that, I just think of, like, Avatar The Last Airbender with Melon Lord. You just have to, like, scream it out, because it's all in capitals. Like, I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom! Ha ha ha! So, B, what did you think of this chapter?
I really liked it. I'm happy to finally be getting some more concrete world-building stuff. This definitely has kind of, like... I'm gonna, like, name-check Harry Potter, like, every episode, but it definitely...
Okay. I think this is gonna be the disclaimer that we put, is that it's very Harry Potter-esque.
It's very Harry Potter in the first book, is what you told me.
The first book, right. Yes. Except, also, we're looking at it very critically, and we're trying to compare and contrast other books. Like, I could totally bring up movies that this could be based off of, easily. But because this is kids' literature, I'm going to keep in the parameters of kids' literature.
It definitely has, like, that specific feeling of, like, introducing a semi-chosen one type of character to this new setting that he's supposedly meant to be a part of, but he's, like, confused about the rules and all of this stuff, and he's, like, learning about it as we learn about it as an audience.
So in my opinion, Percy Jackson's actually, it's, structured after Joseph Campbell's The Hero of a Thousand Faces? Yeah. Basically, Percy Jackson is structured very closely to Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey type of feel, and you can easily... It resembles pretty much Star Wars. You can basically put Percy in Luke Skywalker's role, and the whole story works the same way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of popular media stuff is this way to some extent. I mean, you could even, like, say that it's similar to something like The Hobbit, or even, like, Lord of the Rings or something, where it's, like, a sort of unsuspecting, like, normal person ends up being involved in, like, this much wider, like, complicated politics of, like, this... centuries-old conflict.
Pretty much like the main character usually in most structures. I'll give an example. So if anyone's watched Mad Max Fury Road, people got upset because Max wasn't the main character in Mad Max Fury Road. It was Furiosa. Now, the reason why that is because Max is more of the audience. He's the conduit. He's just there to drive the car. Whereas you're watching it through the other, like, the main heroes, like, that's the only story where Max doesn't actually meet the main, like, they never even talk. They're never in this on screen at the same time. Well, actually, technically they are, but in a weird way, they're not.
Confronting.
No, he's not confronting him at all. Like, that's not his story. So basically, Percy pretty much is our conduit to getting into this world because,
Though he does confront the villain, though. So it's less like that. Like, he's also the main character, yeah.
Percy Jackson represents the audience.
I mean, like, I think that's why this is a super popular trope to have specifically in kids' literature, because it's like, okay, I want to do this world-building thing. I don't want it to be too hard for kids to, like, feel immersed into, so it's like you provide this character he's just a kid like you. Maybe you have ADD, maybe you have dyslexia, maybe you've had trouble in school, whatever. You're just like a normal 12-year-old kid who's maybe had some difficult things happen in your life. But you too, maybe you're a half-blood, like, and if you were thrown in this crazy situation, you would react very similarly, and you would ask the same questions that Percy's asking. Because otherwise it's just a bunch of people who are like, oh yeah, and then we ate the ambrosia that would turn normal people's bones into dust. Like,
oh yeah, and there's also, like, the flip side of the coin where I've read stories such as you're just thrown into this world and you're pretty much, you need to find your life jacket, and slowly but surely you'll pick up the pieces of this world and stuff. So the second time you reread that book, you'll understand everything rather than it babying you on this journey. And I think Percy Jackson does a really good job of not holding your hand only for the first little bit, like, until we get to this part, and then it's like, here you go, guys, this is what's happening.
I'm really curious, actually, to how the second book is going to feel in comparison to this one, just because there is also a tendency with a lot of serialized children's books that they have sort of an ability to, like, have people just pick them up at the library and read them, even if they've maybe missed the first couple ones. Like,
they're pretty much like in the beginning for like first 80 pages, it's just a glorified recap of the first book.
Exactly. They definitely do that a lot in kids. I know that, like, Lemony Snicket is guilty of this, especially in like the first, I would say 4 or 5 books where it's like, and Violet was the eldest and she did invent it. Like there's always like a summation of all this stuff that you kind of already know if you've read any of the books, but you kind of need the gist in case you got this at your public library and they didn't have like the first 2 of them.
I think that's the same thing with Harry Potter. It's the exact same way. It's only for the first 2 books. Then the 3rd book, it kind of like...
Yeah, well, because, like, if you're picking up, like, the 6th book in the series without, like, then you're just... That's your fault if you don't understand what's going on, like, at a certain point. Also, then, children's books, like, in this milieu, like, this specific type of serialized YA or whatever, usually they get longer and more complicated as the books go on because they're, like, introducing more adult character themes and stuff, and also, like, the character itself, they are getting older, so, like, the main character has...
The best way to explain that as well is, in the first Harry Potter book, everything's super whimsical. Harry's, like, making all these observations, like, you, like, look at Diagon Alley, like, oh, look at all these witches and wizards and wizard banks, and then you get to the 7th book, and he's just like, whatever, it's normal now.
Yeah, and the world building serves to, like, make you feel charmed instead of horrified. Like, first you need to know what you're rooting for, basically, like, what you're protecting. It's like this adorable school in the middle of God knows where in England, and there's, like, a beautiful lake with maybe monsters in it, and you'd have pumpkin soup, and there are whimsical, like, candles floating in the air when you eat dinner, like...
And then the 7th book's like, genocide, racism... wizard neo-Nazism.
Exactly. This has, like, the first vibe. You know, it's like this is welcome to this adorable camp where, I mean, like, there are definitely some sinister aspects, and they do even hint at that now, which I guess is, like, that's like a foreshadowing kind of thing to be like, hey, so I know that this all looks really cool, but you fought the Minotaur, and there's more monsters always come back, and you can't kill them, and all this, like, complicated stuff that they're alluding to. So I guess you never feel totally safe in this kind of... You know, there's always a troll in the dungeon, so to speak. There's always, like, crazy stuff that happens even in your whimsical first book.
Not to spoil stuff ahead in the story, but this story does get progressively darker as it goes on, like most... literature. I'll leave it at that. So, B, how does this chapter start?
Starts with Chiron giving a tour to Percy.
Which I love the beginning part is Percy doesn't want to be behind him.
He doesn't trust his butt, basically, because he doesn't want horse poop on him, which is, like, such a hilarious thought process that actually made me feel very connected to Percy. Like, I would 100% react the exact same way. If I met a horse person, I'd be like, let's stay away from that end over there. Not to mention that I would also be horrified of him accidentally, like, kicking me in the face. Like, I have, like, an irrational fear of horses kicking me. I think that's probably from the fact that, like, I took horseback riding at camp, and anytime I was near a horse, my dad would always be like, and you stay away from their legs because they'll kick you and you'll die. And I'll be like, okay, thank you.
Ironically, I lived on a ranch where I actually knew how to ride horses, so...
I mean, I've always been a very bad horseback. Like, I wasn't a good horseback rider by any means when I went to camp. Like, it was...
See, this is where, like, I just, like, imagine, like, in my brain, I've read this so many times, like, people in different situations, like Tina Belcher, like, meeting Creon would be the funniest, like...
She'd be like, and then she would, like, be confused because she would find him handsome, but also he's a pony, and she loves horses, and it's, like, that whole episode where she, like, hallucinates that one horse that, like, gives her life advice. Yeah. I mean, that might be Chiron, actually.
I just, like, she just like, her brain just melts. Like, she doesn't know how to comprehend it. So I love it. It's like, I was careful not to walk behind him. I done pooper scooper patrol for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade a few times, and I'm sorry, I don't trust Creon's back end the way I trust his front. And then, you know, we start going through, like, the places like, oh, here's the volleyball court, and, you know, here's the archery range, and the sword armory.
Yeah, and this is when the stuff starts to happen that's, like, incredibly Chosen One YA, where it's, like, all of the people who know what's happened better than Percy does are like staring at him in a way like, oh, that's him. He's holding the Minotaur, or that's the guy who killed the Minotaur. Maybe he's really important in some way, like all like whispering and
like everyone's craning their neck, almost like Percy has the golden ticket from Willy
Yeah,
Wonka.
it's exactly. You're like the specific chosen one kind of. He's like semi-famous almost already, even though he doesn't know anything about this.
So Percy's famous for not even trying to be famous. He's like Kim Kardashian.
I really hope he's not famous like Kim Kardashian, because there's another reason that she got famous that wouldn't be appropriate for Percy. But anyway.
You know, you start to get progressively sillier. It's almost like a Leslie Nielsen, like Naked Gun, where like, oh yeah, here's the archery range, and here's the active volcano, and look at the strawberry fields as far as the eye can see.
I thought the strawberry fields were kind of cool that they explained why that's a thing, because I was a little confused about why that was such a specific detail that kept being mentioned, but the fact that it's like, oh, that's how they fund what they got going on there. But it can't be grapes because they're banned from growing wine grapes. They could have like made so much money if they could make wine though, like fancy, like they could even make it like fancy, like mythology themed, like Dionysus wine from like the Hudson Valley or whatever. Or like, I guess it's not from the Hudson Valley, it's from Long Island, but whatever. Like a rural place in New York growing grapes, they'd be like, hey.
Just imagine like the strawberry jam and all that stuff. It probably tastes like super amazing. Like I would imagine all the strawberries just are magically delicious.
Yeah, probably. Because they're literally.
But no, I like how they kind of like rationalize like this, you know, this still is grounded in reality and how they still have to pay bills. It's not just, you know, the gods do everything for us.
Which I don't really understand how they have to pay bills. Like, can't they just like find some land? I guess, I don't know. Are they paying for the land? What is?
Well, I mean, okay, in Harry Potter, Hogwarts does exist in like that plane of reality, except if you're a muggle and you look at Hogwarts, it looks like this dilapidated castle.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, so like so muggles can't see it, only like wizards and magical folk can see it how it is, and the closer you get to Hogwarts, the more like your phones, your cameras and stuff don't work.
No, I was just thinking in terms of like, okay, so Camp Halfblood, who are they paying? Like, what do they need to pay for?
I mean, they could like make it disappear. It's kind of like Wakanda.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is like, are they paying for the land? Do people know that they're there? Are they paying for resources, or can they just magically make those appear because they're gods? Like,
well, I would imagine like food and stuff ain't cheap, like stuff like that, and also to make.
Can't they just make food appear though? If they can make strawberries appear, then can't they
okay, I think maybe it has to do with both. I mean, there's still technically plumbing here, so, you know.
Do they hire just a plumber and they're like, hey, can you come to this random place in the middle of Long Island to set up these bizarre themed cabins for a camp that I can't tell you about?
It's almost like a cult. Like they have to like put a bag over his head and then like they spin him around a couple times and then put him in the bathroom.
Or like, would they have to hire a real plumber, or can't they just?
I don't know. Okay, these are like hard hitting questions. I would imagine. Okay, no. I think the main issue though would be like, hey, we need a bunch of like iron ore for our weapons and stuff.
Where are they getting iron? Also, like, I'm just imagining them like calling up like I don't even know what
a mine.
A mine. Like, where do you get iron ore? I have no idea where you would partake of iron ore in the modern day. Like, I know that iron comes from somewhere, like it's in the ground, but like...
I've played enough Minecraft to know where iron is.
Yes, I know, I understand the Minecraft logistics of it all, but just in terms of like, where does one purchase that? Is that, like, I've never seen a building that's like, that's where the iron ore is. Like, I don't...
Well, I mean, you get it from a mine and then they process it into ingots, so it's not, you don't really, they process it all there.
That's true.
So... I mean,
okay, we're really talking about the
world of steel production and iron production by Zack.
Yeah, just like this is going to be turned into a Minecraft podcast. I bet you anything that someone has built Camp Halfblood in Minecraft. 100% a thing that has happened.
So, you know, while they're walking around, Percy's asking Creon about Grover and like, is he going to get in trouble by the Cloven Elders and Dionysus?
Which is a creepy name. Anything with elders is always... not a good vibe from anything called the Elders. Council of Elders is just a bad concept in my mind. I don't care what elders have to say. They're too old.
And Creon's like, oh, he'll be fine, except, you know, he's got a big heart. And Percy's like, why don't they give him a second chance? And Creon's like, oh, this is his second chance.
Yeah, and he's done something vaguely that we don't know about. Then there's something about how he's, like, way more mature than he's, like, what, 28 or something? Is it 26?
Grover's actually, like, 28. He's like almost 30, except like he's even like a late bloomer for satyrs.
Yeah, he's older than I am.
Yeah, he's much older than I am.
Just 4 years for me, but yeah.
Oh man, he's like an old man.
Okay, we'll see what happens to him. I mean, I feel like he's not going to be, like, completely fired, I guess, or whatever happens to satyrs that don't do their job, but he's, like, an important character. I feel like he has to stay around somehow.
And, while they're talking about the, Percy's like, he starts telling him about the gods and also the afterlife and the underworld.
Yeah, Percy refers back to, like, the way that he talks about the underworld, where he's like, oh, when Chiron talked about my mother's fate as if he were intentionally avoiding the word death, the beginnings of an idea, a tiny hopeful fire, started forming in my mind. Chiron, I said, if the gods in Olympus and all that are real, does that mean the underworld is real too? So he's starting to get the sense that his mom isn't quite dead exactly. I had that suspicion, just like the way that, I made the same sort of observation that Percy's making now, where he's like, okay, well, the word death isn't being used. Text itself doesn't use death when she disappears. It says, like, she faded into light or something like that. Like, there's the word maybe dissolve or something involved. There's death is never used.
So we are inferring this. To some kids, it might be, oh, she did die. But here, we're looking at the concept of death differently in Percy Jackson, because in a lot of Greek mythology, death isn't always final.
Yeah. Even they're saying that about the monsters, where, like, monsters can't die either because they don't have, like, souls. They just kind of reform because they're, like, archetypes. They're just kind of...
They're ideas. You basically, the more you think of... It's like The Secret. The more you think about them, the more they are...
Is that The Secret? Was The Secret about Minotaurs?
Yes, The Secret's about Minotaurs.
I didn't read it. I wasn't sure.
It's in my new book, The Secret, ... with Minotaurs.
Yeah, it says that just, like, a very small font at the bottom, and people just buy it thinking it's the original Secret. And they're like, there are Minotaurs manifesting in my home, I don't know why. I don't want them here. And Oprah's just like, and you get a Minotaur.
Well, there's only one Minotaur, so it'd be really awkward that one person. It becomes like a sitcom.
They all have, like, a timeshare of the Minotaur.
Okay, so you get the Minotaur from 1 to 4 p.m., and I get it from 4 to 8? Okay.
Yeah. Sharing a Minotaur. I just imagine, like, an 80s sort of, like, musical montage, like, where it's like, do, 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 and they're just, like, playing Frisbee with the Minotaur, and, like, having a picnic and everything, and then it's just, like, this sort of, like, really bad font gets scrolled on the screen, just says, me and my Minotaur.
That just sounds like they used to have these things in the 80s where before the internet, they actually had people tape themselves for dating.
Oh, God, I've seen those. They're really bad.
They're really bad. It's like, that's what I would imagine would be on that tape.
Yeah, if you think that Tinder is embarrassing now, at least that's not a thing anymore, right? Jeez.
It's still a thing.
It's not quite a thing. People don't make videotapes and, like, send them into dating agency. Like, they have profiles and stuff.
Because there was a thing called dating agencies.
There literally were. That's so crazy to me that they were just like, we'll set you up with someone and we'll give you this weird, awkward videotape of you describing yourself. It's, like, crazy. People will always use technology to get some, basically. That's humanity's curse.
And now if you subscribe to Dating with a Minotaur, you'll get 3 months free and you can actually see your messages.
OkCupid already has...
I was about to say, like, Minder, but that's too bad.
OkCupid already has, like, a mythology kind of aspect to it, so it's just like, okay, Minotaur. Anyway, we're moving on.
So, as they're walking, they're starting to slowly see cabins start to form.
Or at least what are deemed cabins, but they're weird.
As close to Harry Potter without Percy getting a lightning bolt scar. Oh, wait, he gets a lightning bolt, but not now.
Yeah. Because they're kind of like houses. Only there's a bunch of them. There's a fish one, and a bull red one, and there's...
a shack one. Or I guess a shanty town, like a Hoover Town type of shack.
Hoover Town. They're based off of gods, or like the 12... What do you call them?
Gods.
Gods, I guess they're gods. Yeah, like the pantheon, or whatever he calls them.
Yeah, the pantheon of gods. There's the... Because, there's the big three, so you see, Zeus's cabin, you see Poseidon's cabin, and then you also see a kind of a Hades cabin, but not really. And then, like, there's more of them. Like, you see one with, like, stacks, and it just smells like metal the entire time. There's another one that's pretty much, like, splattered in, I'm going to use quotation marks, red paint, and there's, like, a boar head, and there's barbed wire everywhere.
And that's the god of... War one with the grimacing girl in the oversized t-shirt.
And then you go through the list and they become either shabbier or more elegant until you get to one of them, like Cabin 11, which
Yeah. I just find it really funny that they have to, like, theme the cabins, too. Like, I don't know.
It's much like Harry Potter.
I get that, but I mean, like, I feel like Harry Potter's based so much on, like, your personality, while, like, these houses are kind of, like, just have everything to do with who your parent is, and then also, like, they really go hard on the theme, where it's like, oh, you're themed ocean, so surely you want to live in this cabin with a bunch of...
In the ocean. This is the ocean
like,
suite.
Seashells glued to the walls and stuff. Like, it's... I don't know.
Well, I mean, Percy does go into that. Like, he opens up the door and Creon's like, you shouldn't go in there. And, like, it just smells like the... It smells like the ocean, like, low tide. And it just... I don't know. It just seems creepy. But, you know, Percy starts to go around and he sees a bunch of campers. And he also meets... No, he doesn't. Does he meet the Clarice first?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does.
Well, she, like, glares at him, and then later she comes up to him after he goes to the, what is it, Cabin 11? Yeah, that's the one.
He goes to Cabin 11. So Creon takes him to Cabin 11, and that's where he meets the counselor of that one, who is named Luke. He's got blonde, sandy hair. He looks like a surfer dude.
And he's handsome. And that's why it makes Annabeth blush, because he's a handsome dude.
As well as, you know, he's got this really awesome
sick-ass
scar on his cheek, because chicks just love scars.
Cool guy with a scar. Can't resist.
I can't resist that. But then again, when I think of it, because his name's Luke, I think of Mark Hamill, like, early...
Yeah, just really young Mark Hamill. Well, I mean, he also has sandy blonde hair, I can picture that, yeah. But he has short hair.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about, then, like, he has a scar, it's like, oh, this is Empire Strikes Back, Luke, after he got hit in the face by a wampa.
So, we meet Luke Skywalker, and he's handsome.
Literally, we meet Luke Skywalker.
And then he kind of explains some of the stuff about how he's undetermined, so they don't know who his parent is. Which
who your daddy is or your mom is. Actually, technically, you know who his mom is. He doesn't know who his daddy is.
The thing is that I'm confused about. How does the Camp Halfblood people, how do they not know who his dad is?
Well, because they have to be claimed.
Does he just have, like, a bunch of kids? Like, how does that work? I'm just, like, trying to think. I'll find out, yeah, okay. Because I'm just, like, I'm a little confused about how they wouldn't know if a god had a kid or not. Like, I feel like that would be news, but...
Well, no, they wouldn't know. They have the test. Remember, Percy could get into the perimeter of Camp Halfblood, and also he had the ambrosia and the nectar, which have turned his bones into dust.
Yeah, they know that, but it's interesting to me that they don't know which god is his parent. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be a bigger deal.
I mean, you can easily infer now.
No, I know who it is. Yeah, exactly. So it's very strange that they don't know.
Well, I mean, they haven't seen Percy in action. They have only heard,
I guess, but, like,
whispers.
Come on, you know. Like, they know it. No, I'm not saying, of course you know, but they know.
Yeah, of course I know.
They know everything about the gods. And he's this kid who's like, I can control water.
I can talk to fish.
Unless he's Aquaman, we know what's going on here. Like,
well, I mean, it's not subtle at all. If you know anything about Greek mythology, I guess we could say it now, yeah. He is the son of Poseidon.
Does he have to stay in this weird, undetermined cabin still? It's just strange.
They will explain it later on.
Yeah, I guess that must be it. But they know. Okay, anyway, it seems silly to me that he goes to this other undetermined cabin.
I think the interesting thing, though, is, like, he also meets Annabeth, and the first thing he notices is that she's reading a book all in Greek.
Yeah, and he thinks that he's, like, going crazy and that his dyslexia is acting up, which contradicted what they said, right? Because then she says something to the effect of how the reason that people think he has dyslexia or whatever, that he has an issue...
is because ADHD is, like, battle reflexes.
Yeah, his ADHD is battle reflexes, and that his dyslexia is, like, his brain is hardwired to read Greek, in which case... Does that mean that he instantaneously understands Greek?
There's a part, remember earlier, where Grover says something in Greek and Percy automatically understands it?
But in which case, then why is he confused about the cover of her book? Wouldn't he just immediately recognize what it says?
No, not if you, like, saw something like Japanese, it would just, to most people, at first glance, it looks like a bunch of squiggly lines, but it actually is a language.
Yeah, but I'm saying he's supposed to know how to read Greek.
Percy just simply glanced at it. I think.
Okay, so he was confused about what he was looking at, basically. But I feel like if his brain was hardwired, he would have been like, oh, of course. Like, the first time he doesn't have dyslexia, the first time it's very easy for him to read would be that moment. I don't know. That kind of doesn't make sense. But whatever.
Well, I mean, we're like brushing off the past, like the reason why there's medication and people are medicated for ADHD is because they're all monsters.
No, it's because they have the ability to fight monsters because they have like good reflexes.
Yes, they have the ability to, but also the reason why they're prescribed it is from monsters, so they're not.
I mean, that's like
special.
low key the reason for anxiety to some extent. It's just like your fight or flight reflexes just being confused and being like panic, and it's like no, nothing to panic about. You don't need to be freaking out. We're not being chased by some sort of apex predator.
Except here, it's actually, this is where if you have like a panic or anxiety disorder, this place is not for you because, Annabeth basically tells them, yeah, so the monsters you kill don't actually die. They actually will come back. Because, Percy destroyed the Minotaur. And that's the great thing about the Minotaur is there's only one of them, except it can come back. Same as we finally figure out what Mrs. Dodds was.
It's like
she
a
was
chronic
fury.
disease. You just get flare-ups of Minotaur every once in a while. Never fully goes away.
So we also learned that Mrs. Dodds was a fury.
Yeah, or a kindly one, as they call them, for some reason. That's a weird name to call something that's not kind. But okay.
You can just call it a monster.
Yeah. You don't have to have a spooky name for it, but okay, fine. They're the kindly ones, and you can't say the real thing because words have power,
too many times,
Percy.
they'll come back to life.
Exactly. Something like that. Yeah.
Beetlejuice. Oh, hey, Michael Keaton, what you doing here?
Just imagine Michael Keaton as a Minotaur, but in like the tidy whitey. Anyway, it's a very visceral image.
I think I've probably seen that in some movie with him in it. Oh wait, I saw it in Birdman.
Where he's wearing just underwear. You're right. Someone could very easily Photoshop that. We have the technology.
We'll get our top scientists to work on it.
I'm not saying turn him into a Minotaur. I meant just Photoshop. We don't need a scientist. We just need a Photoshop artist. We don't need... I'm not talking about some sort of fly transformation or something.
Okay, scientists, scratch that idea. We'll just get a photographer.
Yeah, that's a little easier.
Well, you've already built the teleportation machines. Oh, okay. We'll save this for another time.
Darn it, we built the teleportation machine too well, and actually you don't get turned into the animal that is also in it with you. You just get teleported. It didn't work. Okay, so he's with Annabeth. She's explaining things about ADD and dyslexia and how it really means you're magic.
You're a magical person.
Then Clarice, the gross mean girl, appears, and she wants to bully Percy, because she's
like 7 foot
the God
8.
of War's daughter.
Yeah, like the way to describe her is not flattering whatsoever.
Yeah, she's just really intimidating and scary. And she says something about, like, an initiation or something. I forget exactly what word she uses, but basically, like...
Is he Big 3 material?
Yeah, she just, like, mocks the fact that he definitely isn't. And then, of course, Annabeth tries to protect Percy, but, like, she's not going to because Clarice is hulking and intimidating and drags him to the bathroom wherein he is about to have, I guess, a swirly. Yeah, which is one of those things that I only hear about in media.
In camp movies?
Yeah, in, like, camp movies or, like, shows like Hey Arnold or something. Like, someone would have had to have gotten a swirly before, but not me. I'm sure that's a thing, but I'd never even heard of people getting those, I've heard of other bad bullying happening, but I feel like swirlies are almost too benign in a way, like they don't hurt you. I feel like actual bullies just, like, hit people.
But yeah, no, so... Clarice almost gives him the swirly, except, Percy's a magical boy.
With magical water powers. Again, like...
a Sailor Neptune.
Here comes the trope of, like, chosen one has powers that happen without him realizing. This is also definitely, like, a Disney Channel original movie kind of thing, where it's like, oh... you're a witch, but you didn't realize you were a witch, even though subtle things happened, like...
Well, I mean, okay... Hey guys, put some more money in this pot. In Harry Potter, it happens as well, where in the beginning, Harry does all this magic and he can't quite explain it.
Yeah, he does, like, weird things keep happening.
Because it's linked to his emotions.
Exactly, it's just, like, things happening.
I would imagine it's the same thing, or it's the gods interfering.
Yeah.
Or a wizard did it.
Yeah, something like that, where it's like your powers are so strong that merely your emotions and what you want to happen, like your self-preservation kind of kicks in, and then
Your fight and flight kicks in, and what you do is you basically nearly drown Clarice. And then it's like, you're so powerful that you shoot like toilet water onto Clarice. So with the power of like Clarice drowning almost, it's very, I guess, Disney Channel-esque, where Percy's completely bone dry, except everything around him is just filled with dirty sewage water.
Yeah, I could very clearly see this as a Disney Channel original movie, actually.
And there's just like a laugh track.
No, not even like a laugh track, but just sort of like, it would play like very quirky music by Mark Mothersbaugh, like do 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 do, and it would like zoom out, and it would just be like just dry around him, and then it would like zoom in on his face like dun dun, and then it would like cut to commercial, and you'd like watch a commercial about Skechers.
No, it would be that. It would be like, I'll get you next time, Percy Jackson, as she starts to like walk out, and then she like slips in the water and falls.
Yeah, and it would like make a boing sound effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Disney Channel, how I miss you. Actually, oh my god, do you know what movie is what this is reminding me of? Have you ever seen the movie 13th Year?
Oh god, no. Oh god, no.
Get me in the water, Jess, I'm changing fast. Is a thing I still say sometimes when I go to the ocean.
But yeah, no, so the chapter ends with like Annabeth's like, I want you on my Capture the Flag team because they're going to be playing Capture the Flag on Friday.
Because he has magical water powers.
Water powers. Now I have to ask you, B. I'm looking at all my audience right now. Who do you think Percy's dad is?
Poseidon. We talked about this.
I don't remember that, because apparently no one knows what it is. Even Percy can't figure it out.
Like, it's not that hard. It's it's one of the most specific gods, really.
Well, I mean, if this was written, like, now, he would be like, oh my god, guys. Looks at Annabeth. I'm a waterbender.
No, that'd be pretty cool if he was a waterbender. Or maybe he's the Avatar. He can control all the elements.
Master of all four elements. What'd you think of this chapter?
I liked it. It was fun. I liked the whole introducing aspect of it, like getting a little grand tour and finding out, a little bit more about the world building situation. We learned about, the ADD dyslexia thing was kind of interesting in terms of like characterization for Percy. You like got to understand a little bit more about what Camp Halfblood looked like. They'd explain the thing about the strawberries and like how that funds what they're doing. There's a lot of like exposition without it being too like, and then this is a thing that we do here. Like it feels fun. Feels like you're on the tour with him.
It doesn't feel like the way I like to do it for a lot of books. It's not like conveyor belt exposition.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like just a list of things. It comes, and I think the way that it works has a lot to do with the fact that Percy is like the narrator, and so you get his sort of thought process where he's like, you see him thinking, oh, well, the way he said he didn't say death there when talking about my mom, that was interesting. And then you see the dialogue that he said because of that thought. Like, I wondered why he avoided that word. And then he asked the question about the underworld. Like, you see his kind of thought process and like why he would ask a question on the tour. Like, oh, and then what's that over there? And who's that in the attic? Like, is that, like he notices things, says them in the narration to sort of justify what he's thinking, and then he asks a question.
So basically there's an observation and then a reaction to the observation in a completely different manner.
So it makes you feel like you're inside his head, sort of, and walking along with him, and like, oh, well, what's that over there? Why is everything this way? And oh, you have an armory here? But he doesn't actually.
They don't go and visit the armory and then talk to the ye olde shopkeep that runs the armory. Which I like the kind of like, it's grounded in where it's like kid fantasy. It's like, oh, yeah, like there's a summer camp with all these kid elements, but you're still in fantasy world.
And he's still treated like a kid too. Like he's kind of shuffled around and stuff. And if he has too many questions, then Karen's like, all right, well, let's move on here. It's enough of that. Which is kind of funny.
It's really funny and adorable. And also, we get a sense of like Annabeth, and then we start to meet more of the campers, so we're kind of getting introduced to more kids rather than, weird pissed off adults. Yeah,
which there's a lot of in the first few chapters of this, where it's just like an angry teacher and an angry step parent.
We only get to meet one angry kid this entire.
That's true. I liked this chapter. This is maybe one of my favorite chapters so far. I think especially because I'm not like, the action was fun with, like, him fighting the Minotaur and stuff. I don't find that particularly as compelling. Like, that's just, like, my personality.
Well, I think for us, it's a little different because we both, we're pretty much cut from the same branch when it comes to, like, we like exposition and kind of like...
Yeah, I like the world building. I like to feel immersed in this world where, like, it made sense for him to be, like, all confused and, like, figuring out piecemeal, and also it has a lot to do with probably a sense of, like, denial where, like, if you were in that situation, you wouldn't immediately be like, oh yeah, of course I'm a demigod and my dad is beside it. Like, it seems so obvious to us, but, like, if that was happening to you, you'd probably be a little bit more like, well, of course not.
B, we have to, like, rationalize it this way. We have to rationalize it as a kid that's picking up this book for the first time and knows nothing about Greek mythology. To most kids, this would come as a shock. To people that have been, around the block a couple times, we can easily infer, but, like, we're treating this as adults rather than looking at, like, the story as a kid.
What, this is for, like, he's 12, so I would imagine people just around that age would be reading this. The Little Mermaid is a thing. Isn't, like, her dad, like, King Poseidon? Oh, no, that's King Triton. Never
King
mind.
Triton,
okay.
and Poseidon's a completely different...
You're right. That's true. I thought for some reason that was a reference to Poseidon, but it's King Triton. You're right. I thought for some reason that, like, that's something that people would know. I mean, also, like, Hercules is a thing that people grow up with.
Yeah, but, like, you're looking at it like you're looking at it's Hercules as the main hero compared to, like, all these other myths and stories. You're looking at, like, one very, very, very small piece.
Yeah, that's true. No, I understand. Yeah. Also, like, when you watch Hercules, you do get this sense of, like, they're making a lot of, like, clever little jokes about, like, sort of Greek mythology that a lot of kids wouldn't get, you know what I mean? They, like, say, like, a sort of sidebar thing about, like, they'll make a pun and you'll be like, oh, because that's the god of war or whatever. Like, you get that, but maybe some kids wouldn't immediately pick up on what they're joking about.
It's one of those, if you know Greek mythology, Hercules, even though I don't consider it one of the best Disney movies, it's still a very funny Disney movie.
It's probably one of, like, the more, like, lighthearted ones. It's pretty funny.
Well, yeah, this is, like, the weird time of the Disney Renaissance where they're going more to the comedy because it'll end up being The Emperor's New Groove is what the comedy goes to. And then it goes right back to Atlantis and Treasure Planet.
Yeah, that's true. It's also, there's a lot of, like, fourth wall breaking, too.
The year after that is then Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Treasure Planet. And,
which are so similar in my mind. Like, they're
cut from the same cord.
Mystical movies.
Which are, I think, some of the best Disney movies ever made.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite.
They're two of my favorite. I remember seeing...
I was obsessed with Treasure Planet as a kid. That was, like, my thing. Did you have the video game as a kid?
I had the whole orb as a kid because I kept going to McDonald's.
Oh, yeah. I remember they had toys and stuff from that. I don't think I had any toys from Treasure Planet. I think by the time I was that old, my mom had kind of stopped going to fast food places. We went, I think, when we were a little younger because, well, we were younger and she was like, oh, well, let's just get a kid's meal, whatever. She also was working when we were younger, too. So it's like, oh, well, we need, like, a meal to feed these children. Later she was able to, like, make more meals.
That's the one great thing about this is, you reintroduce kids to this concept of Greek mythology because it spans, not thousands of years, but hundreds of years. And also, they have stories that are passed down orally rather than written down for the most part.
Yeah, it's fun. I like that it feels didactic without feeling
over the head.
Like you're like a slog. Like you're just like, and here's this about the Zeus and his wife, and
here, child, sit on my knee as I tell you a story about this.
Like it's not so describing things. Like also it does help that one of the main characters is a literal teacher, so it makes sense for him to have this sort of exposition where he kind of talks about.
Oh my god, we forgot to totally brush over the one thing that I totally was said on my notes we should talk about.
Yeah, Chiron is that he lives forever because he
teaches forever, and he's also really sad about it because he sees people grow up and then die in a blink of an eye.
That must be pretty difficult. That's the hardest coaching job of all time.
Or you're the world's worst substitute teacher. You just have to be there, and everyone doesn't know your name right, and no one behaves correctly, and then the good students leave.
And you're also part horse, which I'm sure isn't that fun.
Yeah, it probably has its moments.
I wouldn't want to be part horse. That's just my own. What type of animal actually would you want to be part? If you had to choose.
I don't want to be an animal. I like being a
human.
Yeah,
that's true. I like just being a person. But if you had to choose...
Unless it's something ironic, I want to be part corgi or something.
That would be hilarious because it would just be a little teeny corgi body. And then your torso and head. And you would just be dragging your arms on the ground my legs are so short.
Yes, it'd have to be something like ironic and yet horrifying at the same time.
Yeah, you would also be like so top heavy you would just fall over. Or you'd be like the most ripped corgi ever.
So, B, what are your predictions for next episode, or what the next chapter is going to withhold through us?
Well, there's going to be some sort of thing with capture the flag, I imagine, because that was like really heavily foreshadowed in the last line of the chapter. Probably going to learn more about the camp in general. He's probably going to touch base with Grover and see what happened with the whole thing of him failing his sort of satyr mission and like not being the best at his job, and like see what happens with that. Probably more butting heads with what's her face, who's the terrible mean girl.
Clarice.
See, that sounds like too nice of a name for the character that she is. I just think of the nice lady reindeer from Rudolph.
I don't know. I look at it differently because I think of Clarice as this Clarice.
I guess. I
can only imagine like the kids that sink down lower in their seats because their names are actually Clarice, and this is what represents them in this book.
Yeah, that's not great if your name is the same as like a villain. Probably more exposition stuff. I don't think they're going to introduce that much conflict again so soon. He might find out more about his dad or something. That might be a little soon, but like sort of hints as to what's going on with that. I don't know if they're going to address the thing in the attic yet, or if that's going to be a ways away from now. That seemed like a very small hint at something going on. Yeah, and he also just now has this glimmer of an idea that his mom might be alive, so I don't know if he's going to bring that up. There's a lot of options. I feel like mostly it's just going to be like very camp-centric things of him learning more about the camp and then him doing camp activities for the most part.
Do you think that's what the whole story is going to be about, is just camp activities?
Well, no, just this next chapter, but then it's probably he's going to start asking more questions, and then also some sort of looming threat is going to encroach upon Camp Halfblood, and he's going to have to do something about it.
Yes, like most hero's journey type of...
Because you're not going to mention about how there's a bunch of regenerating monsters all over the world, and then they're just going to, like, sort of whimsically do archery for, like, the next 10 chapters.
Oh, so this is like series of unfortunate events, and there's just going to be some black pages?
Yeah, it's just going to be like, and then it was fun.
Oh, no, it's just like, and then Percy, like, grabbed a sword, and then it's like, and you should never use it unless with the parents' permission. The end.
Don't use swords, kids. Don't kill minotaurs. I mean, I guess you should if you see one. If you can. If you feel in your heart that you can.
But if you see, like, a real bull, don't charge at it, please. Not again. But yeah, so that was the episode for this week. Thanks, guys, for listening to it. Where can they find you, B?
You can find me at B. Kelly Gorman on Twitter, and you can find me at twinpoetry.tumblr.com on Tumblr.
If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41. That's SUDA41. Email the show. That's radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. We'd really appreciate it. We had that wonderful IRS message last week, and well as giving us a nice, lovely review on iTunes, would really appreciate it. We've actually gone up to 9 reviews, and that's been amazing. None of them have been, read, but we've gotten plenty of stars, so that's really good. Thanks, guys, for that. We totally would read those on the show, and if you want to tweet at us, which we've gotten a lot of people tweeting at us, so that's really good. Yeah, a lot of really cool people on Twitter. If you have a favorite Disney Channel original movie, let us know. Tweet at me. tweet at Radio Camp Halfblood, so you can find us at Halfblood_radio. And if you want to find us in any podcasting place or even on YouTube, you can find us. We've gotten so many amazing people through that, and we're pretty much everywhere. And our numbers have been amazing. So thanks, guys, for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. It's been enthusiasm. Amazing. And it's just not two fun, dorky people talking about books all day. Yeah, everyone's been incredibly nice, especially because, I don't even know these books. So I'm really glad that people are getting something out of my thoughts on them. Thanks, guys, for listening to another wonderful episode of Radio Camp Halfblood. Well, I'm Zach. I'm B. And keep staying mortal. Bye. See you guys.